Again, I want to thank the guests in the gallery for attending, but we do have to start our next presentation, y'all. So if you don't mind exiting quietly and continuing your conversation in the hallway, we'd appreciate it. Thank you so much. And Director Potter, you all are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
There you go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Scott Potter. I'm the Director of Metro Water Services. I want to introduce our team members that are here. To my left, Tony Vlasic, the CFO. We have Shannon Fry, John Honeysucker, Mary Peoples, Sharon Smith, Sonia Allman, and Brent Freeman. And I want to recognize our colleague emeritus, Amanda, in the back. She helped us prepare. And I wanted to acknowledge her service to Metro Water Services over the years because it's been stellar. We've been in operation in some form since 1833, and our vision is to continue to be a leading utility that enhances our community's quality of life. Our overall goal at the end of the day is to maintain regulatory compliance and safely provide consistent and reliable service to the community. We're going to go into really deep detail about our budget, but one of the things I wanted to introduce was the concept of fixed expenses for us. Our significant cost centers are labor at 28%, benefits at 11%, electricity at 11%, and various utilities to include water. We do charge ourselves for our water and sewer services and stormwater services. Chemicals are market driven. We have the repair demands on the system that we have to meet. Pilot, low cap, fleet, and ITS are generally expenses that are dictated to us. So our O&M budget is relatively fixed, and we'll go into a lot of detail about that. Going to transition over to Tony to discuss the budget summary, and then I'll go into some operational discussions.
Is this? Am I hitting this?
I think it's on.
Is this on? Okay, yeah, it is. All right. Good evening. Our budget for 24 was $183.7 million. We're asking for an increase of 7.1% to $196.7 million. That's a delta of $13 million. That's for water and sewer only. For stormwater, our budget for 24, fiscal 24, was $33.1 million. Our 25 request is $33.7 million. That's a 1.7% increase, a little over $500,000 that we're asking for the stormwater. For waste services, our budget for 24 was $52.5 million. We're asking for an additional $1.3 million to increase it to $53.7 million. That's a 2.4% increase. And overall, for fiscal 24, we are going to meet our budget for all three different divisions.
I want to discuss operations a little bit and walk everyone through a day in the life at Metro Water Services. So today we likely produced around 120 million gallons of water that was distributed to 223,316 customers. The fundamental requirement is we are regulated by the Safe Drinking Water Act, which is a federal law that we have to maintain absolute compliance with 24/7. We're going to collect and reclaim about 153 million gallons of wastewater for 225,466 customer accounts. Our regulatory venue for that is the Clean Water Act, and it's also federal law. We have permits that we are obligated to meet at each one of our reclamation facilities. We will produce 70 tons of biosolids, and I'm going to go into detail about that because we're approaching a point where we have to expand our capacity on the biosolid sides because the growth in Nashville has been most manifest in the amount of wastewater flow coming into our collection system. We're going to remove 6 tons of grit from our collection system as it enters the Central Water Reclamation Facility. And I mention that because we just brought online the Headworks facility that the council funded in previous capital improvement budgets. We spent $432 million to build the Headworks facility and also transition to ultraviolet light disinfection and increase the flow capacity at that plant. We're going to operate and maintain 3,000 miles of water pipe and 3,000 miles of sewer pipe. 54 water pump stations, 117 sewer pump stations. We have 21,902 fire hydrants, and the acceptable failure rate for a fire hydrant is 0. That's a lot of responsibility to put on our system services division. We will read and bill 11,000 customers for service, interact with 3,000 customers in a variety of payment platforms, operate the 4th largest municipal MS4 stormwater system in the country, design and construct new water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure, inform our visitors and our customers of all things associated with Metro Water Services, and certainly not least, we have to operate 8 recycling centers and 4 convenience centers. One of the things about our friends at Waste Services Division is every day at around 3 p.m., I get their report card. And today, to give you an idea of how well they operate, they got a 99.9% on recycling. They average about 33 misses a day, and they collect 11,100 recycling sites every day. Today, they got a 99.9. On trash pickup, they got a 99.8. So I say that because it's important to remember that waste services, recycling, and trash collection is relentless and it's ruthless, and it's every single day. And they do a spectacular service to the city every day. Finally, we operate the district energy system, which provides heating and cooling for a lot of downtown buildings, and we generate about 4 megawatts of solar power every day. One of the things that's important to note about Metro Water is our water and sewer customer increases. I want to give you an idea of scope. Since 2011, there's been a 26% increase in our water customer base and a 35% increase in our sewer customer base. That's a remarkable amount of growth in only 15 years. So we're not seeing that level of growth persist, but we're still seeing that growth. And like I mentioned earlier, the biosolids facility is seeing the most strain on that. And I want to brief y'all later in the presentation about what we're doing to mitigate that risk. I want to turn it over to Tony to talk about our financial position.
For fiscal year 23, we estimated $382 million in revenue. For fiscal 24, we're projecting $386 million for revenue. That's a little bit over 2% above our budget for the previous year, so we're trying to be a little bit conservative, and we're doing the same thing for 25. We're also keeping that relatively conservative so that we don't miss our mark there. Rates were adjusted in January at 3%. There will be another one January of 25, but it's greater of 2% or the CPI increase. But if the CPI doesn't go up, then there would be 0. We are meeting all of our targeted measurements that we have to for our ENR fund. We're supposed to have over 500 days. We're exceeding that. Our debt service coverage ratios that we're required to meet, we're all meeting those. We're exceeding those as well. Our credit ratings are good, and our capital cash financing, we're projected to be at 52%.
So now I'm going to discuss specific requests in the budget for 2025, and these are in priority order about what we need to fund. The first priority is water operations and wastewater operations for treatment chemicals. The treatment chemicals are market-driven, and they're exclusively based on flow. That's one thing we can't control. We have to meet our chemical demand as the flows increase or decrease, and that the market increase is about $4 million for that. The second priority is going to involve a common theme when it comes to additional positions that we need to operate new facilities. So I mentioned earlier the $432 million project recently completed at the central plant. It's going to require the hiring of 6 electricians and 4 mechanics because that's new equipment. If you go down 3rd Avenue, you see that new building on the right as you're outbound. There's a whole lot behind the windows, and then there's a whole lot as you go down below grade that has to be operated and maintained. There's going to be a theme later in the discussion that the most difficult position to hire right now, I believe, in Nashville is an electrician. The second most difficult is a mechanic, and the third is an engineer in training. So we have to budget the positions to hire them, but we have continuous postings for electricians and mechanics, and they're just difficult to hire because of market. The total request for the central reclamation facility expansion is $1.6 million to fund those positions. The next position request is in our customer care division. It's for 18 FTEs. There's 12 for field activities, and there are 4 to build a web team and 2 for billing and collections. One of the things that's important to note is in our billing and collection system, in our field activities section, the number of employees, the number of customers has increased by 26%, but the number of employees serving that customer base has not increased in several years, in some cases over a decade. So our numbers about the number of customers for phone center representatives were well below market on that. And in spite of the fact that we're incredibly below market, our phone center does a great job of keeping the call answer rate up. We do a lot of technology to support that, but in a lot of cases, a customer needs to talk to a person, and we need to have that person available. One of the things that we're focusing on for this hiring process is to hire more Spanish-speaking employees, because we have a customer base that speaks Spanish, and we need to serve them. For other languages that we don't speak at Metro Water Services, we do have a translation service that we engage. But for Spanish, we need to be focusing and hiring more people. The next budgeted priority is in system services, and that is the folks that do the repair on our collection and distribution system. You may remember early in the presentation, I mentioned that 6,000 miles of pipe and 3,000 in one direction and 3,000 in the other. We want to expand our ability to do in-house repair and hire a 5-person construction and repair crew. This is going to be a multi-year effort to increase our capacity at system services. We've leaned that organization, I think, a little bit too much, and we need to start building their capacity back up. We rely heavily, as an example, on contractors during high break events, as an example, winter emergencies, and we need to, quite frankly, begin to build our bench. We have a lot of really qualified senior people, and we need to start transferring that knowledge and wisdom into a new generation, and we need to start increasing our number of crews. Priority number 5 is the lead and copper program. The good news is we're compliant already with the demands of the enhanced lead and copper rule that EPA promulgated earlier in this year. In order to do that and maintain that, we have about a $185,000 need to have a consultant help us with those efforts. Priority number 6 is utilities, water, electricity, gas, things like that. I mentioned earlier that we generate up to 4 megawatts of solar power every day when it's sunny outside. That's making a dent on our electric bill. Good example is the Omohundro complex that faces Lebanon Road that goes all the way to the river. On Tuesday, we were able to make about 45% of the entire electric demand using solar, and that includes the plant, not just the buildings. So when it's nice and sunny outside, that big fusion reactor in the sky produces a whole lot of power for us. Unfortunately, just like water costs, electric costs are going to go up, and we need to maintain the budget for that. Next is sludge disposal, and we do have to dispose of some sludge, and the disposal costs at Middle Point Landfill are going up, and that's $150,000 request. And then the security, I want to mention that we're going to begin the process of transitioning to hiring internal security and starting to transition away from contract security. That'll be a net zero, but I wanted to inform the council of that intention. Want to talk about stormwater a little bit on operating expenses. We opened the new stormwater complex earlier I guess in September of last year, and we need to have $116,000 to maintain that. And our debt service on stormwater is going up by $250,000. We do have a request for an employee for the urban canopy program, our tree canopy. That's $81,000. And then to discuss our waste services requests, you may have seen on your Metro email earlier this week the job opening for the waste services director. We're going to begin the process of building that team. The recruiting process has already begun, and we're going to bring the waste services director on board and then hire the CFO for waste services and an HR director for waste services. That's going to put, I think, the city in a really good position to continue the growth of the waste services department at that point that we expect to stand up on 1 July of 2025. So over the course of this year, we're going to hire those people and get them up to speed on how we operate and begin to make the transition away from water services management of the waste services division to its own department. There is a contractual services increase of $4 million in the waste services budget that is required. It's in the contract. We are going to be very, very diligent about how we transition the leased vehicles onto our permanent fleet. We do have some options available to us, but we're going to be very mindful of how we do that. So last thing I want to talk about before we entertain questions is what's the pressing issues for Metro Water Services in the future? I want to brief you a little bit about the history of the biosolids facility. And just to remind you what that is, if you go up 2nd Avenue north towards the admin building at Metro Water Services, it's on your right. You have those two, they look like Jiffy Pop popcorn. They're digesters. We have the ability right now to make 95 tons of fertilizer a day. And we're currently making, on an average day, 70 tons. Inside that great big building on the right are 2 dryer trains that work in parallel. And if we lose one of those for an extended amount of time, we'll be in a position where we're forced to landfill dried centrifuge sludge. So we've initiated the process of planning to expand that biosolids facility. Essentially, we're going to have to replicate what we have adjacent to where it is now, because we think that's going to be our most viable risk for service provision going forward. On the water side, we're already engaged in the process of ANSYS project to guarantee the water service for the city in the next 50 years. I think our plan is well envisioned and well executed. So I'm comfortable with our execution of the mitigation of the risk for water service. We need to be very serious and mindful about the biosolids side to make sure that we don't get behind the curve on that. So that concludes my presentation. I do want to make one observation before we talk about questions. Later this year, a person named David Tucker is going to retire. And I want the council, I'm sure you recognize that name, but if you go back to 1833, going forward, there's few people that have influenced the operations of Metro Water Services over the course of a career than David Tucker. And I wanted to be very clear about how thankful I am for his service and quite frankly, the sadness we are to lose his services. But I wanted to make that a public statement and honor David in that way. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so very much, Director Potter. I thoroughly enjoyed my water tour that I was able to do with Council Members Ewing and Gadd. Definitely learned a lot, and I appreciate the information that I'm sure Council Lady Styles will also appreciate me sharing, that flushable wipes are not quite flushable. So,
Flushable wipes are not flushable.
yeah, so just sending that message out so that everyone knows not to flush their wipes. And if anyone is watching right now, if you saw what Metro Water employees have to go through to take care of your flushable wipes, you would not use them either. So thank you all so much. We learned that. And also was very intrigued to hear about people swimming in the reservoir back in the olden days, and cannot imagine someone drinking water after swimming in it. Just very gross. But
Well, as a matter of policy, we don't swim in the reservoir anymore.
thank you very much. The germaphobe in me thanks you so very much. So with that, I saw Councilmember Bradford, Councilmember Druffel, Councilmember Nash, Councilwoman Sorora, Councilwoman Evans Siegel. Oh, not Sorora, just kidding. Council Lady Evans Siegel. Did I see you, Council Lady Allen? No? Okay. Anybody else that I missed? All right. Let's get to rolling. Councilmember Bradford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I want to kind of piggyback. I thoroughly enjoyed that day in the life tour that I participated in. The very same tour where we found out Councilmember Styles likes to toss flushable wipes down the drain. So I can't wait to see that expanded to the public, and so the public can have that same opportunity. I think they'll get a lot out of it, especially about not flushing wipes down the toilet. So my questions, getting to like recycling convenience centers. There's so few of them in the city, and they're, for those of us who live in the general services, they are convenient. Is there a master plan out there for expanding those so that there's more access to those in the future?
So I'm going to turn that over to my colleague Sharon Smith because she's our expert on recycling centers. So Sharon, could you address that for me?
My apologies. I was asking a question. What do I need to do? I need to,
Planning
okay.
table.
I'm so sorry, you all.
Go ahead, Sharon.
All right, thank you for that question. We have, as you know, 4 convenience centers. They're all located on basically the eastern side of Davidson County. A lot of that was just the areas where we had property or we were able to use property. For example, the Eazell Pike Convenience Center is on the Sheriff's Office property. They allowed us to build in 2014. But we do have plans for potentially 2 other convenience centers, one that's further out in the Hermitage area and one that's out west. And the one that's out west, we've been working on for quite a while. It's an old landfill that Metro owned in the 1970s and sold to a private individual. It's called the Buzzard Hollow Landfill, which I do believe is a great name. And that property, Metro is in the process of reacquiring. And that is going to be not something that could be developed for residential use or much actually use in general because it is sitting on top of waste materials. So our goal is to work with the council member. Councilmember Wiener's been very involved in this in her previous term and now back with this term. And we're trying to move forward to build a convenience center out there. That's going to make a big difference for West Nashville because right now, if somebody has, for example, household hazardous waste that they want to get rid of, they've got to drive all the way across the county. So we are working on that and hope in the next couple of years that we will have more options for our residents out in those areas.
Okay, that's good to know. And something else to kind of follow up on that. I've had a lot of developers, reaching out to me about the properties out around Couchville and Pulley Road and that area. And so one thing I always bring up to them is, are they willing to use, kind of set aside some of that land for a convenience center? So question with that would be, what kind of criteria would y'all need in order to operate? Like, is there a space limit? And you could send this via email to the members of the body once you have it, but just kind of wondering, like, when I have those conversations with developers or property owners as a way to show how it benefits the community, I would like to know kind of what that process would be to get part of that property converted.
Yeah, actually, that's something I can answer now. If you've been to all four convenience centers, you'll know some of them are smaller, some of them are larger. The larger ones tend to have more options for disposal, recycling, including not just hazardous waste, but electronics and various things. Generally speaking, we like to have close to 3 acres for a convenience center, with, access to a major road that is not going to cause backup. Sometimes, if you've been out to Trinity Lane on a Saturday, you'll see we can get backup out to Trinity Lane. So we like to be able to have enough space that vehicles can queue up without blocking the street. But other than that, we can work with just about any piece of property to build it to something that could be beneficial to the community.
Okay, this next question will probably go back to you as well, Ms. Smith. In previous budget cycles, our conversations when we're talking about our recycling program, there's always this conversation about, well, a lot of what we can do or a lot of how it impacts us fiscally is based on the market, like what is being bought, how much is it being bought for? What's the current trend right now? Like, I think in years past, glass and cardboard we were getting more money back for those than it was for paper, or it may have been something else, but what's our current trend right now for recycling products?
Overall, a lot of it is kind of static, but most recently, the prices of plastic have increased some, which is very important. And cardboard, generally speaking, is pretty solid. Glass is something that we will have to continue to pay for, but we're looking at in the upcoming contract, because we do have a solicitation out for recycling processing, and I just don't want everybody to get too excited about this, because this is a plan for this new facility that could potentially be built by the contractor. We would be able to take glass commingled with curbside material. So if that occurs, and I know this doesn't directly answer your question, but I think we would be able to have not only more material, but maybe some more markets for glass. There are a lot of people that are interested in the glass in Nashville because of downtown. There's a lot of it. And so I do think that we could see some changes in that area.
Okay, and getting back with the plastic, I know a lot of the issues we have with plastic is contamination. So a lot of the clams and any kind of food containers that are plastic, we've not really been able to recycle because it's usually dirty. Where are we with, I know there's companies out there and there is technology to try to clean that up, and there are companies that utilize that. Where are we with being able to eventually get to where all plastic can be recycled in Nashville?
We are not there. And when I say we, I mean the United States, Canada in general, because there's not, some of the plastic types like your clamshells, there are not a lot of companies that want that material as a raw material. But one particular type of plastic, which is polypropylene, we think we're going to be able to add in the next year, and that's going to be like your yogurt containers and things like that. That's going to make a big difference. There's a lot of them out there. So the big problem with plastic is you can make it, it's cheap, but at the end of the day, there are quite a few types of plastic that truly businesses don't want to buy. So it continues to be the virgin material, and not a lot of recycling on some of those types of materials.
Okay, I got, I think, 2 more questions and then I'll be done. You mentioned that and this will probably go back to Director Potter. Just for curiosity's sake, you mentioned the district energy system is under Metro Water. What was the rationale behind that being under Metro Water? Was that something that you just inherited when we broke up Public Works, or how did that happen?
I can go way back in time, but I'll kind of go halfway back. Metro Finance managed the operations contract for DES, and a very senior person retired who had a lot of corporate history about DES. And with our experience in operations and contract management, the finance department presumed we could be a pretty good operator. So that's how we got authority for DES.
Okay, and I'm assuming that's been working fine ever since.
I think so. I mean, DES is well operated. Constellation does a really good job, and I think it's a really good service to the city.
Okay, and in the budget with the pilot payments of 4.7 million. Is that all for one item, or is that a combination of all the pilots that Metro Water has to pay for?
That's an increase.
Okay, so your pilot is going up 4.7 million.
That's
this year.
correct.
All right, and other than the subsidy for the Nissan Stadium, are there any other pilot programs that Metro Water pays for?
Well, that 18, what's the
18.7.
18.7? That's our entire pilot payment.
And just correct me, 18.7 million?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and the standalone department, which is something, I think it's going to be great, something I've had conversations with in the past. You mentioned July 1st, 2025, and this may be an administration question. Will we have to do similar to what we did with NDOT? Will this have to go through a referendum to create that standalone, or will this be standalone without going to a vote?
As I understand it, the council can create a department.
Okay, so this is not like what we had to do for NDOT.
That's correct.
Okay. And the last one, Music City Gold. Just for new members or people who are watching, is this something that you sell locally at local farmers markets or retailers, or is it just, hey, can I get a bag? Here you go.
We have a contractor that comes and gets it and then markets it. So we do have, I think you can go on our website. Sonny, is that correct? And you can find out where you can purchase it.
Okay, just want to make sure that those watching know that this is a revenue generator for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bradford. And I apologize, Councilmember Evans Siegel. I accidentally skipped over you with my list, so I'll recognize you next.
Thank you, Chair. I love all the work you're doing. I think customer service is incredibly important, and I know that it is really challenging in this high growth environment to maintain service. So thank you for that. I just have two, I think, quick questions. One is the stormwater increase, the stormwater budget. I know a lot of stormwater is handled directly in stormwater, but some of that is actually handled by NDOT and sidewalk building programs. And I'm just curious if Choose How You Move will affect any of the stormwater budget in Metro Water Services.
There's going to be discussions about how they interrelate. One of the things about the stormwater fee, it was designed to correct the stormwater issues that we had countywide, and we're still doing that. This constructing a sidewalk does include the stormwater component, and the discussions between NDOT and ourselves are consistent with that. But I do think that's going to be a very germane topic of discussion as we go into the Choose How You Move referendum.
Okay, thank you. And then just one other question. I know it's very, very difficult. We talked about this on our water tour day. It's an ongoing conversation to find the folks who are qualified to fill these roles. And there are a lot of open FTEs and more open FTEs coming up. Is there any sort of calculated timeline for how quickly you anticipate being able to fill them? I don't want to hamper your ability to fill them, but if you would expect some of those to take more in the 6 to 9 months, then that might provide a little flexibility where we may need it.
It's impossible to predict. Been doing this 22 years and, not an economist, but I'm pretty sure that the ability to hire an electrician is a direct measurement of the health of the economy of a city. And we're still not able to hire electricians because they have a lot of work available on the private sector. So electricians, mechanics, electronics techs, people with skill sets that can do things. We had a really good pay adjustment recently through the pay plan to make us more competitive. We're really aggressive in marketing ourselves. One of the difficulties is explaining to a 25-year-old apprentice electrician the benefits of a pension, as an example. We do that, but we have a continuous posting for electricians, mechanics, engineers in training. It's all market driven. Metro HR, they do everything possible to help us hire people. It's just relentless. The market out there is really strong.
Well, I really appreciate all the work y'all are doing there. It's probably also hard to tell a 25-year-old how good government insurance is because their parents probably still pay for their
Excellent point.
But thank you. And I know that's really challenging and I'm hoping we can make some progress on it.
Thank you, Council Lady Evans Siegel. A quick follow-up question on that one. Do you all work with like IBEW at all or the local union to try to get people hired?
Yes, we talk to everybody who will listen to us.
Okay. Thank you. Next, I have Councilmember Druffel. You're recognized.
Thanks, Director. Stormwater, I know that report that we just came said that the maintenance of the stormwater had a fair amount of contribution to some of the runoff and hitting some of our homes. Any changes or any adjustments that you're making to increase stormwater maintenance?
Well, we haven't had a stormwater rate increase since it was, I guess 2017. Excuse me, my allergies are going crazy.
Bless you.
Without a stormwater rate increase, we don't have the capacity to hire additional crews. It's just that simple.
How do you make that, or who makes that decision?
Well, y'all are pretty busy for the next 6 months. And once the referendum hopefully passes and we get some of the big value discussions behind us, we're going to come to the council with some proposals.
Okay, I think people need to understand the impact on many of our houses that was over the last 2 years and the impact. So need help, let us know.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Druffel. Next, we have Councilmember Nash. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First, got to commend your staff. I think some of them must work 24 hours a day because you can email them almost any time and you get some sort of response.
That person's name is John Honeysucker.
There's several of them on that list. The other is there was a little bird that came, asked me this question, and it is something I hadn't thought about and very poignant. We have obviously a very valuable utility with lots of technical, computerized systems. We have a big database of customers and the like. And in the world right now with cyber attacks being very common, are we doing pretty good at protecting that?
Okay, this question makes me extraordinarily anxious. One of the things I don't want to do is discuss what we do from a protective perspective on cybersecurity. One thing I will say is John Griffey is a Jedi Knight when it comes to cybersecurity, and we do what he says. On the operations side, I feel very comfortable with our position for a variety of reasons, and we can go into detail with you individually if you like, but one of the things I don't worry about is our cybersecurity position when it comes to operations.
Thank you. I'll take your word for it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so very much. Next, we have Councilmember Evans. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I actually wanted to go back to Ms. Smith about the recycling facilities because of the news about the Cane Ridge location closing. Is there appetite, I guess, maybe in another upcoming budget, maybe next year, related to staffing on some of the recycling locations to reduce the amount of garbage that ends up in them so we don't have to go to kind of the more prominent locations like Omohundro and these other ones?
So the drop-off site that is going to be closing is down there at the Cane Ridge High School. That site's been there for almost 10 years. I'd actually reached out to the principal 10 years ago and got that set up. But the problem that we have at the drop-off sites versus the convenience centers, because the convenience centers are staffed, they're enclosed. Those are TDEC requirements on how we manage that. But on the drop-off sites, they're in somebody's parking lot. It's not going to be on property that we own or control. It's usually school property. and we're allowed to be there as a courtesy. Hillsborough High School is probably the only exception. They do have it fenced and closed, and the material that comes out of there is very clean. The problem that we've had in recent years first started out as illegal dumping on the site. So there was trash on the ground, furniture, stuff like that. We have a gentleman that works. His sole job is to drive every day around to the convenience centers and pick up whatever debris is dropped. The problem out at Cane Ridge High Schools has been completely different. It has been massive dumping in the containers. And once that happens, those containers have to go to the waste transfer station. So right now, we are running a mini waste transfer station out there at that high school because almost every container coming out of there is dirty and has trash in it. So what we're trying to do is find another location, maybe one that is a little more public, because this site is kind of in a corner, partially because the school's doing construction. And something that maybe we could have some cameras on. You know, a lot of schools, some schools can have cameras, but there are issues about children and not having a lot of cameras on campus. So one thing we're trying to do is look at how we can pivot from unstaffed drop-off sites to more convenient centers. First of all, it would offer more services. It would be staffed. It would be enclosed. It would have specific hours. And that would probably reduce the problems that we're having at some of the drop-off sites.
Thank you. And then as part of redistricting, I inherited an area that is it's a weird little spot kind of over near Long Hunter State Park. And basically I found that they are isolated from any convenient metro services, include transportation, you name it, they're isolated from it because they're so close to Wilson County and they butt up right against Wilson. And so has there been any discussion around like collaborative partnerships with surrounding counties for community members that may be close to those areas, like a recycling center that happens to be about a mile from these folks, but if they were to come to Nashville, they'd have to go to McGavick or Lakewood. And it's like, a 40-minute drive for them. And I'm kind of thinking in a similar way, the way libraries issues library cards to surrounding counties and charges a fee.
That's something that we can kind of look into, but it's a little complicated because the way TDEC permits, like the convenience centers and things like that, they're very much by county and not necessarily shared because each county is required. If they don't have the majority of the residents receiving curbside collection of some type, they're required to have convenience centers. So, and the purpose of convenience centers was primarily garbage disposal. Over time, of course, recycling has become a major program at the convenience centers, but it's something that we would probably have to talk through with the state because you would potentially be paying for another county's material or they would be paying for our material and that could be a problem, but it's maybe something that we could look into.
Thank you.
Can I jump in that's a great topic when it comes to the new director from a regional waste management perspective. And that's the types of discussions that must begin to happen once we get our new director on board, is how we start doing waste services regionally in partnership.
Thank you. And I'm going to actually jump in with a follow-up question on this topic. You mentioned Hillsborough has a fenced-in enclosed area. Could you not do that for the recycling center at Cane Ridge until you all are able to get another location that could be maybe more expensive and provide more services? Because I've heard from a lot of constituents, and I'll go to Council Lady Stiles next. Councilmember Allen, if you don't mind, I'll go to Council Lady Stiles next. But I've heard from a lot of constituents. My assumption is that the other Southeast council members have also heard from a lot of constituents, and there is a really big concern about that service being taken away from the community and about a lack of people having to go further to now drop their recycling service. And I do understand that people may be not using the site properly, but we want to do everything we can to put systems in place so that they can have a system until we can get something better. So I'm going to allow you to address that, please.
No, that's a really good question. The difference between, for example, the Cane Ridge High School and Hillsborough High School is Hillsborough High School itself wanted to fence it.
Can you put the mic up closer to your mouth?
Yeah, was
Okay,
that
thank
better?
you.
Sorry. I will do better. So the high school, as part of their plan where they did a lot of renovations, they built that, and it was to control the site. I don't know if Cane Ridge is interested or willing to do that, but that was an investment the high school made. It's not something we don't go in and put fences up on school property. That's something the school is going to have to decide if they want to do it. And my first email when we discovered this was going on was to the principal to say, hey, this is happening. Is there anything you can do to help? So it's possible, Councilmember Stiles, that we could talk to the principal and see if that's something they're interested in doing. I'm also not sure if this is the permanent site location they want it at after the construction on the property is completed. Because I do believe some of the debris we're getting may be from the construction.
Okay. And I'll switch over to Council Lady Styles, but if you can reach out to the principal and do everything we can so that the community does not lose that service, because it is a bit of a drive to get to the next available site, and the community's not happy about it. Council Lady Styles, you're recognized.
Thank you so very much, Chair. So when I did the video to let people know that we were going to lose our center, as many people are concerned about losing this, the reality is I have a lot of people, putting that lightly, that are deciding to use these as garbage bins. And so for me right now, I'm more focused on figuring out what the solution is so that this doesn't happen anymore. For us to set up a new site and have the same situation happen again is more likely. So I can ask Dr. Alexander if they would be interested in putting a fence up. Because of where that is, it's so far removed from the building. I mean, because that site is so large, like you can't see it. So unless there were cameras there really so you could capture a license plate or something like that, there's nothing you can do to stop people because they're coming just straight up the driveway. I would like to figure out what our alternatives are. I think for right now, we do need to shut the site down, and maybe that's enough of an impetus for people to understand that we can get our services taken away if we aren't using things properly. So we can keep talking about it, but come May 30th, it's gone.
Do you have a follow-up?
Nope.
That wasn't to you, Council Lady Styles. Do you have a follow-up?
No, I mean, I do agree with Councilmember Stiles. It's a situation that because it's going in the containers, there's nothing we can do to get it out until we take it either to the recycling facility where they're not going to take it because it's so contaminated, or the transfer station. So I'm, of course, happy to work with Councilmember Stiles to see if there's something we can do. We are looking at other properties in the area, in the greater area, possibly even over at the community center to see if maybe that would be an option. Just a thought. It's more public. There's a lot more people around. There's probably already cameras. Right now, we're kind of focused on communicating with the community, because the thing that's really important for people to understand is that this is a service. It does cost money to operate, but it's an important service because not everybody is in the urban service district and not everybody has curbside recycling collection. And until everybody has that, we need to have these sites, because that's where people can go to make sure that the material that they, the paper bags they got at the store or the cardboard boxes are actually not ending up in a landfill, they're getting recycled. So this is something that's really, really frustrating, but at the same time, we want to find another location because that community is underserved.
Thank you. And then one last follow-up. Do you all have signage with maybe pictures or signs in multiple languages at the site so that people can see when they're dumping what can and cannot be recycled at that site, or what's appropriate for that site?
Yes, all of our convenience centers and drop-off sites for the recycling, the signs are in English, Spanish, Arabic, and I believe Kurdish.
Okay. Thank you. Council Lady Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. Sharon, this is continuing on the topic of waste and recycling. I'm interested to know a little bit more about the contract for the sorting facility. And if we did any kind of study to look at different options for sorting, I'm a little concerned if they're using the same type of truck that comes today and compacts. When you've got glass in there with newspaper and things like that, how in the world does that not significantly degrade the quality of the other materials in there when you're crushing glass into it? So have we looked at other options and best practices in other cities, and is it possible to, I hope I'm not asking that question too late, because I would really like to consider other options before we commit to that.
Okay, so that's a really good question. You know, there are still some cities, just like we are now, that just require glass go to drop-off sites and as a single stream. The technology in recycling processing, which now is starting to evolve AI and things like that, is become more robust. The contractor we're currently working with in their facility is quite old. They've done a lot of upgrades, but this was an old Packaging Corporation of America recycling facility that was probably there 50 years ago or longer. And a newer facility would allow us to do the thing that will resolve that concern of having the glass kind of mixed in. It will still be in the truck together, but the glass will be removed at the front end immediately. And once that glass comes out, the rest of the material goes through the line, it moves through, and it goes on. And this is a process that a lot of other cities are using. We just haven't been able to get that kind of technology here. And we believe we'll be able to have it in the next processing contract.
Okay, we'll talk some more. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Do we have any additional questions before I ask my last two? Okay, thank you. And Director Potter, this one is at you, but you can hand this off if someone else on the team may want to answer this. It's in regard to the TANs. When does that borrowing impact your operating budget or your capital spending?
No, it does not.
Okay. And then does Metro government, are we paying, my understanding is we're paying interest on that?
That was news to me, but that is accurate. We are paying market interest.
Okay. And in a tight budget year, is there a way that interest can be maybe forgiven or turned back over to Metro government? Is that something that y'all will be able to do?
The direct answer to that question is I have no idea. Our friends in finance would be able to answer that question, I think.
Okay. You say yes or no? Okay. The question was regarding the TANs, and we are paying interest on the TANs. And the question was, in a tight budget year, could that interest be forgiven, or could that money come back to Metro?
The answer is no, Chair. Amanda Deaton-Moyer, Department of Finance. The interest earned by Metro Water Services is earned by the ratepayers and the dollars that they put in for capital improvements and for operations. And so that those dollars are statutorily in the enterprise fund.
Thank you for that. I'll ask my other question offline. Thank you. Thank you all again for all the work that you all do to make sure that we have clean and safe drinking water. We appreciate you all so much. And with that, we are ending the water services presentation. Y'all, we have to be as brief and concise as possible.